So I cleared out everything. I I talked about 45 minutes. Sorry if I seem like I'm rambling and so forth. I talked about 45 minutes, and what really bothered me was that it didn't record any of it. I talked about going to meet with the going to the colleagues office, and I probably talked about the date aspect of like October being the Halloween month, and um, I talked about 45 minutes. Most of it was, I think, was probably the and people probably picked me apart. I don't know. Nobody's really picked me apart. I don't get that many views anyway, but I talked a lot about the Madonna movie project, and before that, the history, high school and in elementary school, and the paranormal, and these books I have, and I want to. I can't be as heartfelt as that, I guess, but I'm just gonna go talk about it, and heck with that. It won't be as like seem as heartfelt as it was, but all right. So I don't remember where I was in part two, but I cleared everything, almost everything off my desktop. There should be size now, and I tested this before, and it's running. QuickTime Player is running. So I I don't remember where the guy. There was a guy. Okay, so um, I I like to dress up, Samantha, and I was working. I had been at I'd been at this job till the place I with these two colleagues, a few colleagues, and February 14th, I couldn't go any further. So February 14th, I moved to another job, and that job, I think I talked about this before. I remember talking about this before in the other video. So it would have been October because I linked that with Halloween, and it's me being interested in the metaphysical and the mythic, and Dracula and the lore and everything, and storytelling and so forth. I linked that with that. I I wanted to visit the workplace and say hi, and because I'd been in contact with one of my colleagues, and I'm just going to be doing this because the hair is sticking out a bit, and I had I hadn't talked to her about my cross dressing during that time I was there, but afterwards I opened up, and she was curious about it, and she had some. She asked me questions. I said no, I'm not a heterosexual and so forth, and I like women and so forth. But then I would send her pictures, and she liked them. She seemed to like them, and then I left in. Well, that was all. I had already left in February, mid-February, and I was at this other job. And by June or July, I had to take up a second job because they cut my hours. So I was doing two jobs, and this colleague asked me if I could. We both expressed interest in me going to visit, and so she asked if I could dress up as Samantha because she wanted to see me in person like that because she'd only seen pictures, and her colleague, who's another coworker there, wanted to see me, and so I went, and when I sat down, she said it was it was it was weird because she said that she felt like she was talking to a woman, authentic woman, and I took that as a nice compliment, and then she mentioned this guy that she was friends with, who, or she knew, whatever, who was a writer, and I was probably talking about my memoir. I probably started efforts at a memoir, written a draft of a memoir, and I have that on Amazon through as a Kindle book, and I have several things available on Amazon under my name Jeffrey Linehan, and um, I the reason why I haven't promoted a lot is because, well, other things get, life gets in the way and so forth, and also one of them, the memoir, it's only really a draft, and that's why I haven't charged a lot for it. So she said that in so many words, it was hinted this would be a good, helpful, maybe helpful guide because he writes books. She said he writes books, and he's into publishing. He's also I so that was probably October 2022, and then October 2023, I went to some other Halloween party, and then had somebody some two other Halloween parties. The one in that same month, and then one the following year in October 2023. And so then this past week, I had this colleague and I had been talking, and she said that it would be nice. She would like me to go visit again, and she'd like to see Samantha again. So she said her colleague was also interested in seeing me, and could I wear the blonde wig? So I went there this past week. It was Thursday, and so it was nice. And I came in. I talked in a feminine voice the entire time, and it was nice because I felt comfortable because it's a type of workplace where that's acceptable. So I went in and I looked even better, more presentable. So she said, I went in, talked at her office, and she said that, I think I brought it up that it's funny that before I remembered her saying that she felt like she was talking to a real woman, and she said, yeah, I mean, now even more so, almost her exact words. So I brought up that I was something about me having written the memoir, working on the memoir, and that was part of it. That was a chapter in it, and she reminded me about this guy that she knows, and so I got the information. When I got home, I sent him an email. Feel a sneeze coming on, but sent him an email. So somebody may comment on that. Who knows? It's going to be the first comment in a long time I've gotten on this channel. But I sent an email listing mentioning that I'm a friend of so and so, and we may have talked before. We probably did talk before, if I remember correctly. And I'm writing this memoir, and so he emailed back and he said he's puzzled. He'd be interested in reading what I have. He's puzzled whether those may have been two separate emails. He's puzzled whether as to what I want. Did I want to write something or publish something? And so I replied back, yes, I'm absolutely interested in having something published, this memoir, and I listed, and I thought about people like Madonna. How would they respond? They would probably take a firm, like a not respectful tone, but a dignified tone, and they would come in with strength and email back, taking advantage of the situation that they had set up. And so I emailed back, yes, and these are the topics that I cover in that, and that I would want to cover in a lengthier, fuller memoir. And then it's attached as a PDF, and he said thank you, and he would read it and get back to me. So somehow that related to the Madonna project. I remember in the earlier video I talked at length. So I don't remember how I got into that initially when I did that video, but in elementary school, early half of elementary school, I I watched a lot of TV. I watched Silver Spoons and Give Me a Break and the Transformers and um, I remember other shows I didn't and Saturday morning cartoons. And then in the second half of elementary school, I I got interested in I was still interested in Transformers, but I became exposed to Star Trek, and I always knew this is what I was talking about in my original video. I wanted to be a writer, and I knew my career path, and that's I feel really dismayed, and I feel like maybe I won't get anywhere, and with this YouTube channel, maybe that's the only thing that I can be able to achieve in life, and I want to get my ideas out there. And um, it's such a shame. I had grown up I really wanted. I was writing, and I was a good artist, like drawer too. I was drawing at elementary in elementary school. I was drawing like at maybe a high school level, and um, I I remember early television, early half of elementary school, it was like Give Me a Break and Different Strokes and Facts of Life and Silver Spoons and Benji, Max, and the Alien Prince. If, for those of you who remember that show, and Saturday morning cartoons and Transformers a little bit. That was in the second half, right when I moved. And Star Wars, I was a big Star Wars fan, and I would read all about the making of it. And I was also reading about how a little bit later I was reading about maybe in the second half of elementary school after I moved in fourth grade, beginning of fourth grade, I would I would read about the making of these different shows. Making movies didn't really occur to me at the time, even though I enjoyed going to movies, watching movies on TV like Superman and Superman 2, and just about every weeknight. It was the CBS Monday night movie or Tuesday night movie, and the ABC Sunday night movie. And so I watched things like Short Circuit on TV. That's how I was exposed to like Superman and The Sound of Music, and who knows what else. I don't remember. A lot of Disney, real live action movies and so forth. And 1984, I've seen, and interestingly, I'd seen a number of movies. So I began in the second half of elementary school. I was writing stories about Transformers. There was a kid that I would visit, and we would talk like philosophically. We shared interests like largely began with Star Wars and Transformers, and sometimes we we would collect a few other things. His parents were able to afford more than I could or my mom could. I remember Mask for a bit, and I remember Masters of the Universe, and but primarily it was Transformers still, and we would talk a lot, and sometimes on the phone, but I always enjoyed going to his house, and I envied that house. His younger sister and his older brother, and both parents there. And here I'm coming from just my mom, living with my mom, and I at that point I thought at that point I wasn't even thinking of career or anything. I just maybe I don't know if you feel the same way, but I instinctively just was intrigued by Transformers and the story potential, and that sounds too adult and too career oriented. I just was fascinated by all these toys and the background stories behind the toys, and I would keep a spiral. I would keep two spiral notebooks. Sometimes my mom would help. We would go into toy stores actually, and we would copy the paragraphs and text specs from the backs of each Transformers box. And in some way, I couldn't afford all these Transformers toys, but I knew them as characters, and I kept them in these two spiral notebooks. And I would read through sometimes my mom's handwriting because she would write faster than I could, and I could just read through Swerve's function and motto and the paragraph about him talking about his personality and his capabilities, technical capabilities, and the stats like speed, rank, firepower, skill, courage, rank, endurance, all those. I don't remember how many there were. Strength, whatever. And I could read through those, and when I would watch television, even at that young age, I was watching it at like an adult level, or at least I was. To me, it wasn't like adult level versus kids level. At that age, I just understood these characters as voicing arguments that like a writer was doing, and it was just the flow, the thematic flow. Even at I was age 8 or 7, 8 or 9, 10, and at the level I was doing. And while doing that, I was also reading. Where are those books? The books like this. Now I lost. I left behind for a stupid reason, just out of space or something. I left behind a lot of the my UFO and paranormal unexplained library collection of important books. But like this is the level. These are two books I bought recently, and I found out that my bank account, the job that I had been with a temp agency, I started in November, and the department where I got the job that the job was in, they eliminated the whole department as of Monday. I mean, Monday was my last day. Monday was the last day for all of us. So, I'm with this temp agency, and they are many of them aren't. Some of them are. Or another temp agency, and so I haven't really been looking for work. But before that, I had tried to buy replacements replacements for the books that I left behind. And anyway, it's my bank account is down to a little less than $400, and there's a whole other thing. But at the time, like as a child, like 8, 9, 10, I'm even into middle school, like I'm reading books at this level. I mean, look at that. And here's another book. And there's another one down here. Now, all three were from our replacements for ones. And these aren't kids' books. So, that was that was the level I was in, and somewhere in middle school, I guess, Star Trek: The Next Generation had already premiered when I was in sixth grade. So in middle school, I guess that's when I wrote a short script for The Next Generation called The Dead Space Scrolls, which is a takeoff on the term the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was about previous ship being found, like a ghost ship being found by the Enterprise, and I was also writing stories based on or using the Transformers characters, using those two spiral notebooks as guides for their personalities. And I even wrote a novella as a birthday present for this friend of mine, and that was during 7th grade. Finals were approaching, and I also wrote another novella. I started another novella in my a binder notebook, with 3-ring binder with paper you can take in and out, put in and take out, and it was about 60 pages, the first novella, and I think it was called Nor the Pestilence, if I remember correctly, and it was about a disease that affects the characters, and they have to make allegiance with each other in order to overcome to find a cure for it. And the second one was about Atlantis, and I don't remember much about that second one. But anyway, these were I'm writing it for that age. I'm writing pretty good stories, and about that point probably was when I was already reading about how television production goes, and I was focused on the writing part of it, and I wanted to create stories. And I was in middle school and so forth. And then into high school. I remember watching the Dick Van Dyke Show and enjoying that, and I'd already begun watching Bewitched, and I had already been watching I Dream of Jeannie really, really early, like even before elementary school began, somewhere really. And I remember Herbie the Love Bug really, really early on in my childhood. And anyway, back to the Dick Van Dyke Show and Bewitched, and I remember Married with Children I enjoyed, and I wanted to write stories for that, and I thought that was like a dream job, and like maybe the same feeling as a kid feels about going to Disneyland, I felt about the idea of just being in a world where they produce those shows and talking about being a writer, and I could really identify with Dick Van Dyke's character, like Rob Petrie in that sitcom. He was a staff writer on a TV show, and so automatically, the place he would go would be Los Angeles. So I don't think Los Angeles was really in mind. It was just a requirement. Like, I want to be a writer. I'm going to be a TV writer. I'm going to create TV shows like Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry, and have these shows be famous and well produced and well done and memorable. And the ones who created Bewitched and these other shows, and Los Angeles just keeps being mentioned so many times in what I read and what I'm I guess primarily it was from what I read. There wasn't any internet at that time, so what little TV shows, I didn't really watch TV shows. There weren't a lot of TV show documentaries about the making of these things, so I must have been reading about them and watching them, and I knew that it was all produced in Los Angeles, so that's where I figured I would go after high school, maybe enroll in college in Los Angeles. And so I high school is ending, and then I moved to I couldn't move to Los Angeles. Reality hit, so I had to stay and commute to locally to Syracuse University, and I had developed the people that I had. I forgot to mention something. In high school, I had started writing a few scripts. I wrote one for Star Trek: The Next Generation and submitted it with my mom's help to the producers of Star Trek, and they said that was their final. They wrote back and said it was their final season. They had all their script commitments for that year, and they weren't accepting anymore. Were not accepting anymore. That's how I first found out that would be the final season, and then in college, I was writing more spec scripts, and I was sending them to the production companies themselves. And meanwhile, I was also writing just for the fun of it. I remember a Night Court one and a few ones for Married with Children, and I even wrote a Get Smart one, even though that show had been off the air for a while. I just loved the show, and it was a fun show to write for, and I wrote several for that, and I even wrote a mini version, but it was a mini length, but it was one for the Dick Van Dyke Show, and so for that, I remember also watching Saturday morning. I would watch Dennis the Menace and Saturday morning cartoons, but I would watch the live action Dennis the Menace. And lastly, I didn't really care for, but You Can't Do That on Television in my childhood and all the way through. I didn't stop really till their schedule stopped and they didn't really air it anymore. I just really loved those shows, and that was my life. And if so anyway, I'm in Syracuse University, and I commute back and forth, and so I would be waiting around. I remember the X-Files. I wrote one for the X-Files, a spec script, and sent that in to try and get attention, get myself maybe hired or at least noticed for an interview or something. And see, I was precocious and ambitious, and meanwhile, I wrote. After that, well, around the time of that X-Files episode, I wrote my second screenplay. Actually, my first one was about a mermaid, actually, and I don't remember the title offhand, but that was around 1993 when I was somewhere in junior year of high school, and then I was in college, and after that, my first screenplay was for a course. I mean, it was during the course, but I would have written it anyway. It was called Cerberus, and it's named after the multi-headed dog that guards the entryway into the underworld. And the reason why I named it that was because it was a UFO thing. Because I read all sorts, like these books, like Write What You Know, and I had a whole library, and I would borrow books from the library about it wherever I could, and that would be my first spot, my first section whenever I would go into a library. Or I didn't really go to bookstores, but the library, the paranormal, especially UFOs, and I would. So I wrote about several factions trying to get to this treasure, that actually a craft that had crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and that's why I named it Cerberus, because of the multi-headed dogs. I pictured the heads all fighting with each other, like biting at each other, and they guard the entryway into the underworld, or in this case, it would be guarding the entryway into the Pacific Ocean, where this alien thing with alien technology and alien awareness of aliens' existence is buried. And I wrote that, and then I wrote two James Bond parodies, and those are the first. That was my first exposure to James Bond. Really, I hadn't seen any movie before that, but watching the movies, I borrowed these movies from the library on video cassette and with a VCR and so forth. And I had a VCR at that point, but I borrowed as many of them as I could, and that was my first exposure, and I just watched all sorts of them, like scattered around. Sean Connery mixed with George Lazenby mixed with whoever the other, I can't remember who the other one was, but Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton. That was before the newer movies with Daniel Craig. But and then so I picked up on the format of them, and that helped guide me, and I thought I was writing pretty well. And they were parodies, so it was a humorous take on. If you've ever seen Get Smart, something like that. I mean, it was a humorous take, but it was a parody. It was a James Bond clone, so to speak, but with comedy put in. And I felt like I wanted to be in Los Angeles, but it hadn't really dawned. Reality hadn't really dawned. This feeling of despair, dismay that I was cut off. I wouldn't really make anything. out of myself with these stories hadn't really hit. Um, I figured maybe after college I could be able to develop something and go to Los Angeles and develop a career. And um, but I felt a little bit of a struggle. There was a two-part Spin City episode that I wrote as a parody of the Watergate scandal, and I developed ideas for my own TV series, about 12 or 13 of them. Eventually, I wound up with like 20 different ideas, of some with fully fleshed out characters, some with fully fleshed out characters, and types of stories and sets and so forth. And that was towards the end of my time in college. And let me rewind back. I was commuting, and I would spend time on campus at the bus stop, waiting around for the bus. And I remember that, and I remember waiting like further downtown, waiting around for the bus to get me home. And there was some wait time, and I remember I associate that, and I think Madonna's 40th anniversary, or Madonna's 40th birthday was somewhere around then. And I remember nostalgia for the 1980s and how different this time was now. This would be the mid to late 90s, and the two friends that I would visit, the house and so forth, I would visit, were really essentially gone, and they'd moved on with their lives. And there was this sadness I felt over somebody from a girl from my past, and I wanted some kind of kinship, and I felt really lonely, and I wanted some kind of companionship with somebody who, like a fellow artist, who could understand me, and so that's where the crush on Madonna came from. And she is beautiful, so forth, and she's ambitious and she's talented, and so towards the end, this is like 1998. Towards the end of my time in college, I was I wrote a screenplay with her as a character, and I knew that she liked screwball comedy, so I read some books. There was one book in particular that I would borrow several times from the library, and I bought it online, and I own it somewhere here. And I thought, whereas those screwball comedies, so I borrowed from the library, and I would watch on TV as many classic 1930s and early 40s screwball comedies as I could. And that was like my favorite was Bringing Up Baby. I watched Love Crazy, and there's something about a woman who everybody knows and gossips about. I can't remember what movie that was. Something about town, I think. So her name is in the title somewhere. Thurgood something or other about town. I don't remember. And It Happened One Night, and some other movies as well. Farmer in the Dell was another one, and Topper, and there was one where they're detectives. He has a mustache, William Powell, and I can't remember her name, maybe Myrna Loy. And see how many people my age at that time would even know about these actors. And William Powell, The Thin Man, and a few other movies too. And so I picked up on and I read online about the tropes that were in screwball comedy, and so I wrote it towards that, and I had some aspects of it already figured out. They were very strong. Excuse me while I move this up a bit. They were very strong things that I wanted in the movie. They just instinctively were there. Like I wrote myself into this character. Not that I was copying all of myself, but I knew not to do that. I knew to take what certain traits I wanted in this character, like for example, a nobody, or somebody who doesn't have the social status that she does, and then paired with her having this high social status, and it was all about illusion and perception and miscommunication, and that goes right along with screwball comedy. And I remember I enjoyed Three's Company growing up, and whereas in screwball comedy, then it was New York and Art Deco, and this architecture, specific architecture style um, in the 1930s, and I could modernize that, but still make this as iconic, treat it the same way as they did with New York City in the 1930s, and use similar themes. And whereas I would have it in the 1980s, and I would have a soundtrack where a 1980s soundtrack where the songs actually thematically fit with the scenes they were placed in. And I remember Adam Sandler's movie The Wedding Singer coming out about that time, and one thing I felt I could do better with was not just having the songs from that time and just vaguely talking about 1980s things, but actually have them figured in, and the songs very strategically placed. I guess you'd have to have rights, and sometimes you can't get rights to the songs you really want, but that didn't stop me from imagining what specific songs I wanted in certain scenes in the movie. And the thrust of it, the core essential part was about how she's this big star, and it's in New York City, and she has to get a trip to get to Los Angeles in order to film the music video Material Girl, and that plays in with her being a material girl, and he's a nobody, non-materialistic at all, and he really can't afford it. He's like in a different social status entirely, and he's been conditioned that she is larger than life. He's been conditioned by MTV and news and the media to think of her as larger than life, and not really as a person, but as this figure, this celebrity. And meanwhile, she's been conditioned to think of fans or the public with a bit of distance, and it's difficult and tricky, and sometimes like not threatening or just cautious. She's cautious about opening up to anybody, and so then the two meet, and she thinks that he's really a relative of the Rockefellers, and then it's this part where if he could, eventually she finds out and so forth, and that causes problems and comedic problems, and if he could get rid of his shell, in terms of her seeing him, shell of like what he looks like, and he's a nobody, he doesn't have the great looks and so forth, and the social status and financial status, and if she could remove the shell of being a celebrity and just be her. It's like Marilyn Monroe. If like Marilyn Monroe could just shed the Marilyn Monroe aspect and just be Norma Jean Baker, and then the two of them could come and like having a meeting of the minds, and that's what I wanted with Madonna. Like I wanted to some aspects. There were common interests, maybe common interests, but really it was like one artist to another. I wanted to share my ideas with her, and I wanted that like acceptance, like she understands what it's like to be an artist and a writer, and I wanted that sense of respect. And so in the story, she's trying to get there, and there are different things that deter her. I was basing it. I drew inspiration a lot from Bringing Up Baby, and whereas there it was a gender switch in there, not intentionally, but just seemed like that. Like the main character in Bringing Up Baby was David, and he meets, and he's very rigid and so forth. And he meets Susan, and she's very much the opposite. And there's as with screwball comedy in general, there would be clashes and bickering and so forth. It's a romantic comedy, of course. So in this. She would be the main character. I mean, obviously, it seems she would be the main character. So, rather than being rigid or whatever, it's not that she's rigid. It's that she has had to play the role of a celebrity and had to deal with certain aspects of it, like a deal in a material reality and so forth. And he's not anything to do with that. And like they would clash quite a bit and bickering, humorous bickering and so forth. And the tension between them, like sexual tension too, between them. And then at some point, they just remove their shells and just meet as equals and talk. And I couldn't have them marry at the end. Not all, I guess, romantic comedies have to have them marrying at the end, but there's a hint of that in these romantic comedies. Well, in mine, I said it that she is going to film Material Girl, and those who do know what happened in real life, when she was filming that, she meets her future husband, Sean Penn. So that would add an extra bit of spice, like a little bit of tension. But that's like in the future. I said it before she was married, so I couldn't have them marrying at the end of the story, but at least they would have formed a good relationship. And I remember one of the points that's brought up, like at the end of Act One, like I figured I knew enough to about movie structure to put at the end of Act One, like there's a question like upon what are strong relationships based, and so I found the answer is what they come to. It's like friendship or boosting each other up. Like one contributes to the improvement of the other. Like both grow from the relationship. And that's the answer. And it's posed somewhere at the end of the first act. And so it's something I learned later. I had these instincts and not a full story. Well, of course, I had these instincts for what I wanted to put in, and I had to have something like a larger objective story in which to put it in, like a plot really to put it in. And so in that first version I wrote in 1998 for a class, I used a little bit of Cyrano de Bergerac, and I used The Taming of the Shrew. And then I submitted it, and I used her as the main character. What I'm saying is some of these tropes or these aspects are instinctive, and I would later find out in this theory dramatica I would discover like 13 years later. I would discover that that's a storytelling theory. It has a whole model, and it explains how your mind generates a story, and all these different themes and aspects that go into a story are instinctive. It just lays them out and explains it, like makes it explicit why these things happen, and it can. There's a whole theory behind it. I don't think people really are aware of it, but those that vaguely hear about it, I think, just may poo-poo it as simply, oh, it's just artificial intelligence writing, or it's just they don't understand, or they're so used to writing by numbers or something. It's nothing to do with that. It's a whole theory about how the mind generates a story, and then there's software to it. And if you understand the theory well, you can do some of this in your head. On some subconscious level, all this is happening in your head. Basically, what I'm saying, why I bring that up, is that some of those things I knew about in movie structure and aspects of how to write a story came out in this, and I wrote it. And then later on in Dramatica, when I discovered that, I found out why I had certain things and I could fine-tune it. But anyway, I had this relationship between them, and I knew these central characters, but I had to put them into a story or scenario. It's a good word for it, a scenario. And so I used a bit of Cyrano de Bergerac and a lot of Taming of the Shrew. And I felt like I was doing what Shakespeare had done, or whoever wrote the Shakespeare plays, what that person had done. and I say whoever wrote Shakespeare plays because I'm leaving open the possibility that Shakespeare directed them, but perhaps had other writers writing. Who knows? I'm not a Shakespeare scholar, but I'm saying I'm not. I know enough about writing, the writing process, and theater and so forth to understand there's a possibility that a writer doesn't necessarily write every word of a play. Anyway, I know Shakespeare put on the plays and directed them and so forth, had a big hand in them, and whatever. Anyway, so those Shakespeare plays were adaptations of earlier myths and stories, and so I'm taking like The Taming of the Shrew and adapting that into mine, um, similar concept. Um, it's similar that I'm taking. It's an adaptation as well. Um, so I wrote that, and it was for a class, but I would have written it anyway. I really intended to. I wrote it for the class, but I actually wanted to send it to her to impress her. And so after the class, 1998, I sent it to Creative Artists Agency, and around 2000, it would have been like 1999, and then January 2000, I got a letter back saying, no, we're not interested at this time. And then I delved into how to write it and improve it. And that's when I spent like 12 years figuring, trying to learn how to do it better. And meanwhile, I was feeling like further and further, more and more like other people were going on with their lives and developing their careers. And I was struggling to develop this, despite the fact that way back, like in elementary school, I was on course already to be like a TV producer, TV executive producer, what they call showrunner, as well. Many times, it's a creator of a show. Like Rod Serling created The Twilight Zone, and Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek, and Carl Reiner created The Dick Van Dyke Show, and so forth. I wanted to be known as that, and have well done, well produced shows like that communicated ideas and had memorable characters, and they live on and in people's hearts and viewers and fondly remembered. And so uh, I would work on it, and it said I have this YouTube channel. In the earlier version of this thing that apparently wasn't being recorded, I was talking for 45 minutes. Darn thing wasn't recording. I also talked about, probably about this point, I talked about perception, about Kabbalah and illusion, and I was putting in aspects of that. I remember in Kabbalah, there's an origin story where there's the Ein Sof and there's nothing else originally, and then the Ein Sof wants to create something aside from itself, so it contracts, or in some sense makes itself more hidden in terms of perception, in order to create enough space for this other thing besides itself. And it's like at the dawn of the beginning of time, literally at the beginning of time in this myth of Kabbalah. And I think Isaac Luria may have created this story. I don't remember the origins exactly of this, but and through evolution of these mystical texts, it's be interesting. I tried for a while to trace with the threads that as they evolved in Kabbalah, these different texts where they were drawing information from. But anyway, the Ein Sof then emanates these realities. I'll call them emanations, and the first emanation is mostly similar to the Ein Sof, and but it's a little bit more solidified, more like our tangible reality. And another emanation out is further more like our reality. And then we get to the furthest emanation out, and it's the emanation that's the most distant from the Ein Sof is our reality, and so consequently, um, the one that's furthest away from us or furthest from us is the Ein Sof. And anyway, but on some level, it's all unified as one thing. It's a matter of being hidden, and perception. Um, what they call contraction, or tzimtzum in Hebrew. So I thought that would play in nicely with the story I was writing about illusion and about misperception, and she mistakes her. She mistakes who he is at first, and she doesn't see him as somebody with a full mind, and worthy of being talked with, and conversed with. She just sees him as a annoying fan, and he at first and has a struggle over time with perceiving her as a real person rather than this celebrity that he's been conditioned to see her as. And it's all about perception not only between them, but other aspects, and that plays into comedy too. Like Three's Company used that a lot: misunderstanding and misperception, and so forth. And I also remember talking in that earlier attempt to record this video about the movie Calendar Girl from 1993, and um, it takes place in 1962. There are three guys who are, I think, college age, or they're just about to go out into college, and it's like their summer before college, and they want to go visit see if they can visit Marilyn Monroe. And so there's shenanigans with they try and spot her, and they chase her around sort of, and there are run-ins with the mafia, and that deters them, and that's a whole plot, kind of a whole focus is dealing with this mafia group. And meanwhile, they're trying to see Marilyn Monroe, and they keep failing at it, and they keep missing chances to catch her attention. And then at the very end, after that mafia plot has been resolved, one of them gets a call, I think, from Marilyn herself, and Marilyn herself, and saying that she knows, she thought it was kind of cute or something. She knows that they were trying to meet up with her, and just an invitation to go talk with her, or like she meet him or them. It seems like it was one person. It was sort of like it was one person. Like, for some reason, it had to be one of the three. It couldn't be all three. I don't remember why, but she's essentially, she's not doing anything. She if he wants to, she's open to it. So the one who was the kind of leader of the group, that in fact, the actor who played the part played the younger brother. I think his name was Brenda. There was Brenda and Brandon in Beverly Hills 90210. He's played by that actor. He backs away. He says, "No, I'm not as interested in meeting her as you are, like, in one of the other two of the trio." And so this guy goes and meets with Marilyn, and there's a voiceover. He delivers it all in voiceover over a montage of shots of them walking along the beach and so forth. And he says something like, she didn't really talk much. She wanted to hear about me, myself, all about me. And she said it's nice to have friends, because she didn't have many, and that's built on like real life, what people have how people have talked about Marilyn Monroe, her private life. And there's some sadness there, and like loneliness and longing and so forth. And Um, she says something like it's nice, or he says that she said it's nice to have friends like those. Um, so then he wakes up the next morning. He finds that he hears on the news, the radio, that she was found dead and overdosed, and whether it was like intentional or she was lonely or it doesn't say, it doesn't speculate. It just simply reports that she was found dead, and you could read into that however you can. Like maybe she purposely overdosed, or maybe she overdosed accidentally because she was feeling sad or something, and just it happened. But like that's the last moment he had. But fortunately, he was able to have it before while she was still alive. So that was a strong influence on me. Not that I copied the movie, but that moment, just those final moments, the scene before that final scene, that scene with them, with the montage, um, that partly inspired. That was an emotional, strong emotional motivation for the movie. What I wanted to do with the movie, like what the spirit of the movie. That's the best way of phrasing it. The spirit of the movie. Um, I wonder how long I've been talking here. Oh, this is 55 minutes, 56 minutes. Um, so I think I said, um, from what I can remember, I said the bulk of, if not all of what I had said. Can't say all of what I said because I don't remember exactly what I said, but the bulk of what I said in that earlier attempt, which unfortunately didn't record. Um, but I remember saying that I just have this YouTube channel, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to reach that point or accomplish um, anything else. But at least I have this to share, and so forth. So I'll see you next time. Bye. So I wanted to add something that I remember saying in the earlier video, I mean the earlier attempt at this, that I, if I had been to, if I had moved to Los Angeles, and if I had been able, if it was realistic and I could have sustained myself there, and um, I, I would have probably had a career. I would have found some way of doing an internship, and that would have been, I would have been in a better spot. I would have been the only spot to be able to develop a career. Sorry, my there. Um, my career would have begun at an early age, like 21 or 22, and I would have been dating a Jewish girl and Jewish woman, and I would have been married by now and had a kid, and had, I imagine I would have had a nice life like in the Dick Van Dyke Show, and even though it was set in New York City, New Rochelle, but I would have had a nice life. I just wanted to add that in.